Joining us today on this very special edition of the Aldonzo and Dee Show, we have Senator Mitch McConnell is in the studio with us. Mitch, how are you doing? It sounds like you're doing better than you were yesterday. What are your plans to end the war in Ukraine?
Mitch, what are your thoughts on the criticisms of the Maui wildfire response?
Whoa, an unannounced Joe Biden just came into the studio. Coming at you from the Skyhammer Studios here on Cities 92.9. This is the Aldonzo and Dee Show.
You have insanity in my earpiece.
I'm Aldonzo.
I'm Dees.
And happy Saturday morning to everybody out there listening. So I want to get this out of the way because I kind of got my my cajones busted last week for this. Dees, how was your week?
Not too bad. Fairly uneventful. Nice weather. Just been kind of relaxing and all that good stuff.
You didn't almost die from tripping over a cat?
No.
Okay. Now, I've got an old story here. All right. This has been on the post for a long time, but I just came back across it. Have you seen this?
No.
The guy, it's a headline, "I'm lucky to be alive after sustaining car crash injuries tripping over my cat." And I immediately thought of you. Look at this guy.
Yeah, I was waiting on this one's been on there for quite a while, but yeah, I thought of that almost immediately after it happened when I took the tumble in the shower. I thought, oh, now I get it.
I like the way I like the way the New York Post writes things. They said here, the freak apocalypse meow accident reportedly occurred on the evening of October 23rd while the Leicester-based professional musician was home alone with his hairless Egyptian Sphinx kitten, Eric Morkami. Well, I don't know what that means, but anyway, it reminded me of Dee's. Anyway, we're going to get out of that. We're going to give a big shout out to the sponsor for the show, Enviroseal. If you have sunken concrete slabs like patios or driveways, not drive walks, they will come in with polyurethane foam and they'll pump up the slabs and they'll be ready to use the same day. They also do commercial and residential spray foam insulation as well. They're the best in McLean County. So if you need spray foam insulation or got sinking concrete slabs and you need to pump those puppies up, give Enviroseal a call at 309-275-6303. Okay, so we had a couple guests on the show this morning, which actually went better than I thought it would. What do you think, Dees?
Yeah, they were both very personable.
Of course, we're talking about Mitch McConnell here more than anything else. I mean, Biden has his moments every day, but this thing with Mitch, man, this has been a couple times he's just been blanking out.
Twice in a month now. What's got to happen here? I mean, this is one of the most powerful men in the U.S. Senate. And he's clearly the Walking Dead. In this latest one, you can see when he goes catatonic or whatever, his aide that walks up tries to grab him to pull him away from the podium, and his hand is pretty much locked onto the side of the podium because mini seizure, whatever you want to call it, like he's just catatonic. And it's utterly ridiculous that we continue to allow these people to make the biggest decisions in this country on both sides.
Yeah.
I posted a meme on our Facebook page, facebook.com/EldonzoDees, where the whole Olive Garden Parmesan cheese thing. And somebody said, oh, equal opportunity hater. Yeah. I don't care if you're Republican, Democrat, whatever. When it's time to go, it's time to go. And it is clearly time to go for Mitch McConnell. Just like it's clearly time to go for Dianne Feinstein. It was clearly time to go. Who was that other crypt keeper that the GOP had for so long? I think he was damn near 100 by the time he finally stepped away.
Oh, was that Strom Thurmond?
Yeah.
Strom Thurmond, who at the ripe old age of 21, Biden got to, vote for the we're going to have to get into that story. I didn't have that pulled up. But that's another Biden, what the hell are you talking about thing. We're going to get into that later. We've got a lot of stuff with Biden as well. But this thing with McConnell, look, McConnell's 81 years old. He has been a senator from Kentucky since 1985, almost as long as I've been alive. What in the hell are these people doing?
I don't get it. They have to do something with term limits, with competency, and it's got to be an outside doctor that does this, because the next day they're like, oh, the doctor in Washington, D.C. said he's good. Of course he did.
Well, how much is a doctor getting paid to say that?
Exactly.
And at this point, conspiracy theories, everybody's getting paid. No, I believe it. There's no other reason anybody would want to continue to be a senator unless you're making tons of money. And I can't recall off the top of my head exactly what a senator's salary is. It's like probably 170,000.
It's under. I want to say, yeah, we looked it up. It's in the 150 to 175 range. Nothing. It isn't like life changing money. I mean, it's good.
No,
money.
they're getting
Don't get me
kickbacks.
wrong. Yeah. What does he make every year? Probably $50 million when you consider stocks, investments, and under the table stuff that is basically masked to look legit when we all know that it's not. Lobbyists, all that stuff.
And his wife, I believe her name is Elaine Chao, has been in bed with the Chi-Coms her whole life.
Yeah.
And of course, she's been on the board. I think it was Bank of America. So, yeah, you can't tell me that these people have been in office for 40 years or 50 years or in some case 60 years. Mm-hmm. And they're just doing it because they love their country anymore, because I don't believe it. But
hell no.
There's no way they do. They've been bought and sold. It's the rhinos. It's the establishment. We're not talking about these young up-and-comers. We're not talking about Trumps.
Yeah.
Okay? We're not talking about Vivek Ramaswamy. Who knows? He'd have to actually hold office for me to judge him. But he said some stuff about cutting off aid to Israel, which I want to get to. Also, that I missed from the debates. I guess that was in the debates, and I completely missed it. So we want to get into some stuff about Vivek Ramaswamy, and of course we've got some poll numbers coming out with real clear politics that we're going to go over and show you just how good the Republican candidates are doing and just how good the Democrat candidates are doing. Of course, the biggest one there being RJK Jr., who's actually, I think, holding at 13 or 14%, which is pretty impressive considering he's running against an incumbent. So we'll have to see how that goes. We've also got a lot of celebrities coming out who were liberal. They still are liberal, don't get me wrong, but putting their support towards RJK. And, of course, his big thing is the vaccine.
Yeah.
He's anti-vax. So I think a lot of these people are starting to wake up here. But let's get back to the Mitch McConnell thing. I've got the audio pulled up. I believe it's the correct one, and if it's not the correct one, you still need to hear it anyway because it's damn scary, if you ask me. So this is – which day was this? This was just what?
Just a few days ago.
Just a few days ago this happened.
I believe it was Wednesday, off the top of my head.
Yes, I believe you're correct. So this is, I believe it was Wednesday. Let's go ahead and roll audio. You don't need to see it. You can just hear it. It's bad.
It was Wednesday.
What are my thoughts about what?
Running for re-election in 2026.
Now, he was just asked, what are his thoughts about running for re-election in, I think it was 2026. And let's get back to it. That's what he asked him. Nothing. Blank.
Did you hear the question, Senator? Running for re-election in 2026?
He just said yes. Faintly.
All right, I'm sorry, you all. We're going to need a minute. Senator.
Answer the question, old man. And he's just blank. He's just being handled at this point. He doesn't. So that audio just ended.
And she tries to grab him. I think she was going to walk him away from the podium, but he was like deadlocked with a grip on that podium. He couldn't move. He was basically catatonic. I'm surprised he managed to muster up that yes, when he heard the question, but then he couldn't.
He was struggling. When he said yes, it's almost like he didn't know where he was at.
Yeah, and the doctor that they talked to that cleared him to return to work basically said, well, it's the effects of the concussion that he sustained, 4 or 5 months ago. He fell down. He had a concussion.
Okay, so no, wait. Let's say the doctor's right, and he hit his head so damn hard that he's just blanking out. I don't care. Get him out of office.
Get him out. Yeah.
Marjorie Taylor Greene had a good one to this. she was saying shame on the families. It should be a shame for propping this guy up there, just like Joe Biden's family should be ashamed. But these people feel no shame. They have no shame.
I don't care what side of the political fence that they're on. You have to understand, these are the people that will decide whether or not we go to war when it's time. Congress has to approve us going to war. And you're going to put that decision in the hands of people like Mitch McConnell, Dianne Feinstein, and these invalids, basically, that are propped up with a stick. And they're going to send your kids to die.
You know, they wanted to... Nancy Pelosi wanted to keep the nuclear codes out of Donald Trump's hands. She wanted to change that to where the president didn't have the ability to launch a nuclear warhead. Okay, they kept claiming that Donald Trump wasn't fit mentally to be in office. Do you remember all this? Mm-hmm. They were freaking out. We need to do the 25th Amendment. He's lost his mind. He's not got his wits about him. Whenever you hear Donald Trump talk now, he's like 100 miles an hour. He's sharp. He's on it. Where are these people at that while he was in office wanted him removed from office because he wasn't cognitively fit to do the job, and said that Ronnie Jackson, which was his doctor, was lying for him? Where are these people at now? No, they're crickets.
Too busy holding up walking stiffs like
it's like Weekend at Bernie's in our government. The world's going to hell in a handbag. But we've got some other stuff we're going to get into on the show. Alice Cooper pissed a lot of people off, and he doesn't seem to be backing down, but Carlos Santana did. We're going to talk about the Nashville shooter and the recent shooting down in Florida, compare those, and try to figure out why in the hell one manifesto has been released so soon and one hasn't.
That's weird.
That's very weird. All this and more when we come back from short commercial massages right here on Cities 92.9. This is the El Donzo and D Show. Hey, welcome back to the El Donzo and D Show right here on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. I'm not Deez.
I'm not El Donzo.
And here we are back again for segment 2 of the show. We got some spillover from the first segment. We were talking about Biden. We were talking about McConnell and how these swamp creatures are allowed to stay in office and how we at this point think it's wrong. So the whole question over term limits wasn't something when I was younger that I'd say I really got into. It was, I don't care, whatever. But when I was younger, you got to remember something, and you as well and most other people, we weren't as engaged in politics as we are now.
No.
We weren't as fired up as we are now, because back when we were younger, politics was just, we didn't care. I mean, we cared, don't get me wrong, but it was so painted with a broad brush. Everybody was all the same in politics. You had Democrats and you had Republicans. And if you were on the right, you always voted for Republicans. You loved all Republicans. It doesn't matter who it was. If you were on the left, you loved all Democrats. If you were in the middle, you hated everybody. It was pretty, that was that simple, was it not?
Yeah.
Either you're right, left, or you didn't give a sticks about anything.
Yep.
But now that we have seen all this stuff get exposed, now I don't like technology too much. I like it and I don't like it. And we talked about a picture of some young lady that you showed me. It was on Facebook. You know, the picture she puts up there, it looks gorgeous, and then you see her in person, and she's a beached whale. All right? So we've talked about that and how technology, we think there's too much technology. It's ruining our lives. It's ruining our children's lives, the youth. But the one good thing about technology is you almost cannot keep anything from getting out at this point, Deez. Would you agree?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, there's no secrets anymore. It all comes to light. Social media is the bane of our existence. I mean, we've seen people that tweeted something when they were 16 get their lives ruined when they're in their mid-20s and 30s.
But the good thing is it goes for both sides now. So at least there's some...
Does it, though?
Well, I mean, look, there's stuff that we can see that political leaders have said that 20 years ago we'd never know about.
True.
So my uncle, when I was a kid, used to tell me, because I used to get into mischief all the time, okay? Imagine that, El Donzo getting into mischief, right? He used to tell me, he says, always be careful. It doesn't matter how dark it is, what time of the night it is. Somebody's always got up to take a leak and is looking out their bathroom window, i.e. you've always got eyes on you. Everything you do, it's almost impossible to get away with anything anymore. And think about technology now. That was when I was a kid. We didn't have cell phones. We didn't have social media. We didn't have cameras in our pockets. So now to get away with anything or to cover something up, whether it's a slip up or a crime, is nearly impossible. Unless you've got the federal government on your side.
I was going to say.
If you got the federal government on your... Because they do it with impunity now, don't they? They're just blatantly breaking the laws.
Sure seems that way.
And, Hunter Biden, there's another story coming out with him we're going to get to. Hopefully we can get to all this. I mean, there's a lot of news. And we say it almost every week on this show. It's a heavy news week. But when you have this much corruption, we're looking at World War III, which we have to talk about that as well, because that's getting even more out of hand in Ukraine with these F-16s that I believe it's Poland's going to be supplying, but they're American F-16s. Yeah, the U.S. government is not going to give Ukraine F-16s directly. We're going to give them to Poland and give them to Ukraine. This is nuts. So anyway, this goes back to what I mean about you can't keep anything down, because I'm sure that Biden's team, they got to be freaking out. I mean, how bad of a job would that be right now? That's got to be one of the worst jobs in the world, is to have to coach this guy and tell him and then stand back and go, he's just going to fail. And he fails. Somebody has had to have told him not to say what he said in the clip I'm going to play for you, because it's so insensitive and he makes everything all about himself. And I think a lot of people are getting angry about this. All right, we're going to roll clip. So he's talking about Maui. He talked about his kitchen fire. We covered that last week, right? Where he almost lost his Corvette and his cat and his wife and all this other stuff, which it was blown out of proportion. The kitchen fire was nothing. And he's telling the residents of Maui this, who've just lost everything. They lost children. They lost their homes. Don't you think, if this guy was cognitively there and he slipped up, somebody come up to him and say, Mr. President, you shouldn't do this. You shouldn't try to make your small life hurdles comparable to what these people went through. Don't you think if he was cognitively okay, he'd be like, yeah, I'm not going to do that again. And he wouldn't do it again. This goes back to the Jerry Sandusky thing. I relate a lot of stuff to Jerry Sandusky. How many times did he get popped with underage kids? How many times did Paterno probably say something to him? If you remember, Jerry Sandusky
I don't know that Paterno ever did say anything to him.
He may not have, but it was Penn State, right?
Yeah. So
Jerry Sandusky, what was he, the youth coach? How did that work out?
No, he was on the staff. He was a Penn State coach.
Yeah, but he was exposed to a lot of young children, or exposed himself to them, should I say. Anyway, Jerry Sandusky came out over the years after he went to prison for molesting children, was told repeatedly, you're in the shower with this kid, you're naked with this kid, the kid says you're touching him, stop. But he couldn't help himself, because if he was innocent, he'd be like, I'm staying away from kids for the rest of my life. I don't even want to get in this situation, but he couldn't help himself, just like Joe Biden cannot help himself when it comes down to this. So here's the clip. Now he's discussing, I think he was back down in Maui, but he's discussing the Maui wildfires and Hurricane, is it pronounced Idalia?
Yeah, something like that.
So anyway, here he is talking about, I'm going to pull this clip up real quick. That's a tongue twister, isn't it? All right, roll clip.
I say, why can't I go back? Storm's over. Why can't I go back and look and see if I can find that wedding ring, or why I can find that album? Can't find that thing that I've lost in the house. It's really tough. Really, really tough. I didn't know anything like that, but lightning struck my house. We had to be out of that house for about 7 months while it was repaired, because so much damage was done to the house, and half the house almost collapsed. And you wonder, what's going to happen? We've already dedicated $400 million to pay for the debris removal. Once we get the toxic stuff out, to take all the removal, and the federal government's going to pay for that.
Once we get all the toxic stuff out, pay for the removal. He sounds like Kamala Harris. He was so into making that about himself that he completely flubbed the rest of it. So, yeah.
How much lightning hit his house?
It couldn't have been that. Don't you think you would have heard about this on the news?
Yeah.
If his house was destroyed? He's lying. He's lying, just like, oh, Joey, those two men are in love. That's why they're kissing, and it's the 1950s, and they're doing it in public because they're in love. But a lot of the buildings he's talking about passing in this story weren't even built yet. He just lies. And they just let him go with it.
Lightning actually did hit my house when I lived in Indianapolis. It was over the weekend. I was actually back here for the weekend, and went home that Sunday night, and I was standing out on the front porch smoking a cigarette, like, I don't know, 10, 11 o'clock, and I knew it had stormed bad throughout the Midwest all weekend. And I'm sitting there smoking, and I look over and I see a piece of siding in the neighbor's yard. And then I look and I see another piece, and I was like, oh, the neighbor, must have some damage to their house. So I walk over to the edge of my porch, and I'm looking at my neighbor's house. There's nothing there. There's no damage there. Well, then out of the corner of my eye, I just see something. I look up, and there's a giant hole in the side of my house because lightning struck the apex of the roof, went down the beam, and then blew out the side of my attic.
Okay, well, what Joe Biden is referring to is a white-collar issue. Yeah. He's got insurance. His McMansion got struck by lightning. I don't care if there's a hole in it, and I don't care if it started a fire. This guy probably ran in and grabbed his Rolex collection.
Yeah, I didn't have to leave for 7 months.
Didn't have to leave for 7 months. Didn't have to scrounge in the streets and sleep on sidewalks, okay? So I don't want to hear it. Nobody cares about this guy. You know what? I was actually in a building when it got struck by lightning one time. I actually went to a church the first time in 15 years, and boom, it got struck, and I ran out of there, and I don't know what the damage was. They tried suing me over it.
Well, actually, the house right here down the road got struck by lightning, too.
But
I don't know that it physically made contact with the house, but it was close enough that it fried several of my electronics.
Well, point is, it's nothing in comparison to what the people in Florida are going through right now or what the people in Maui are going through. One thing, I think we got enough time to at least start this one off. So, everybody's heard my theories about Yevgeny Prigozhin, right? The Wagner Group leader.
Yeah.
Okay, so my first theory on this was when he was doing his big march to Moscow. First theory was that him and Putin were in this together to weed out the dissenters in the Russian military. And I still kind of stand by that. Then, of course, I think it was just last week, Prigozhin's plane goes down. Actually gets blown up. It looks like it's blown up.
Yeah, I don't think it was shot down. I think there was a bomb on the plane.
Now, this isn't the first time Prigozhin has perished in a plane crash. Did you know that?
I did not.
Yes. He was dead. I think it was about 20 years ago. Died in a plane crash in Africa. They declared him dead, and a couple days later he came out and he was fine because he uses doubles, a lot of them. So he is always on the lookout to protect himself. Now you can't tell me after what he did, okay, if he was really not in Putin's corner. And let's look at it this way too. Everybody focuses on Putin. The people that the most feathers he ruffled was with the Russian military and the Russian military leaders. He was never going against Putin. He was going against the Russian military because the Russian military and him got in a penile measuring contest, and he had Putin's ear. And he took out, of course, a couple of jets. I believe it was jets in the Russian military. I don't know if they were MiGs, but he actually got a couple people in the Russian Air Force. So he's got a lot of people that have access to a lot of equipment that could have taken down that plane. Now a video has just come out, and we're going to talk about this in the next segment after this commercial break, of Prigozhin a couple days later talking about that he's fine and everything's good to go. So we're going to get into that. We're going to do our best speculatory process on this and tell you what our opinion is. Right back when we return here on the El Donzo and D Show on Cities 92.9 News and Talk of Bloomington Normal.